Most people believe that if a child grows up without love, the result is obvious that they'll be broken, angry, or visibly damaged. But that belief misses something essential. If you grew up without consistent emotional care, your brain didn't fail. You adapted. It learned how to survive in an environment where connection didn't always feel safe or reliable. And if this experience feels familiar to you, you're not alone. Many people carry the effects quietly, without realizing where they came from. If this kind of psychology content resonates with you, feel free to like the video and subscribe to the channel. It helps support more conversations like this. Because growing up without love doesn't just shape childhood, it leaves behind specific patterns that follow you into adulthood. Patterns that influence how you trust, how you attach, and how you protect yourself emotionally. In the rest of this video, we're going to break down exactly what those patterns are and why they make so much sense once you understand where they come from. When a child grows up without consistent emotional love, the impact doesn't stop when childhood ends. It doesn't simply fade with time or disappear once that child becomes an adult. Instead, the brain adapts. And those adaptations quietly shape how a person relates to others, to themselves, and to the world. One of the most common patterns is a heightened sense of vigilance in relationships. People who grew up without stable love often become exceptionally sensitive to emotional shifts. They notice subtle changes in tone. They reread messages. They feel tension before anything has actually gone wrong. This isn't because they're imagining problems or looking for drama. It's because, early on, their nervous system learned that emotional safety was unpredictable. Love could be present one moment and withdrawn the next. So the brain adapted by constantly scanning for signs of danger. That hyper-awareness once served a purpose. It helped a child stay emotionally prepared in an unstable environment. As an adult, it often shows up as deep emotional intuition, even if it can feel exhausting at times. Another pattern is discomfort around receiving love, care, or praise. When someone offers kindness, the reaction isn't always relief or joy. It might be disbelief, suspicion, or a quiet urge to deflect or minimize it. This happens because the brain formed its earliest beliefs in an environment where love was scarce or inconsistent. Over time, the child internalized the idea that they were not inherently worthy of care. So when love appears later in life, it clashes with that deeply rooted belief. The brain doesn't reject kindness because it's unwanted, but because it feels unfamiliar. This isn't coldness or ingratitude. It's the nervous system struggling to integrate something it never learned to expect. Many people who grew up without love also develop an intense level of self-reliance. They learn early not to ask for help, not to depend too much on anyone else. They become highly capable, resourceful, and independent. This isn't accidental. When emotional needs are repeatedly unmet, the brain reduces its expectation of support from others. Depending on someone becomes associated with disappointment. So the system adapts by turning inward. Over time, self-reliance becomes a default setting. What others may see as emotional distance is often the result of a nervous system that learned survival through autonomy. Another adaptation is emotional flattening or numbness. Some people notice that they don't feel emotions as intensely as others. They may struggle to access joy, sadness, or deep connection. From the outside, they appear calm or unaffected. Inside, there's often a sense of distance from their own emotional experience. This pattern develops when strong emotions were once unsafe. If expressing feelings led to rejection, neglect, or pain, the brain learned to dial them down, not because emotions were bad, but because they carried risk. By reducing emotional intensity, the nervous system protected itself from overload. This isn't a lack of feeling. It's a form of emotional regulation that once made survival possible. A deep fear of being a burden is another common thread. People who grew up without love often minimize their needs. They apologize easily. They hesitate to ask for help. They carry struggles quietly, believing it's better not to impose. This belief forms when a child's needs were ignored, dismissed, or treated as inconvenient. Over time, the brain links having needs with being rejected, so the system adapts by becoming smaller, quieter, and less demanding. What looks like selflessness is often a learned strategy to preserve connection by asking for as little as possible. Many adults who experienced emotional neglect also have very high standards for relationships. They don't form attachments easily. They may have few close connections, not because they lack social skills, but because shallow relationships feel draining or unsafe. This selectiveness isn't avoidance, it's discernment. The brain learned that emotional investment is costly, so it becomes careful about where that energy goes. Connection is only allowed when it feels genuinely safe and meaningful. This often results in fewer relationships, but deeper ones. Finally, there's often a rich inner world. When external emotional support was limited, the brain turned inward. Reflection, imagination, and self-observation became sources of stability. Many people who grew up without love develop strong self-awareness and psychological insight. This inner depth isn't accidental. It's what happens when the mind has to become its own witness, regulator, and companion. While this can feel isolating at times, it's also the foundation of emotional intelligence and personal insight. None of these patterns mean something is wrong. They aren't flaws. They're adaptations, each one formed in response to an environment where love wasn't consistently available. The brain did what it always does best. It adjusted. It protected. It helped the person survive. And understanding these patterns isn't about labeling or fixing. It's about recognizing that what may feel confusing or heavy now once served a very real purpose. Growing up without love doesn't mean something went wrong with you. It means your mind learned to adapt, to stay alert, to survive when warmth wasn't guaranteed. What looks like sensitivity, distance, or self-protection is often depth shaped by experience. You're not alone in this, and you're not broken. You simply learn to operate in a different emotional language. And when you look at how people who grew up in the 1970s carry rare strengths from a very different kind of childhood, it adds another layer of understanding to why early environments shape us so deeply. If this resonates, there's more waiting for you just ahead.